We acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we work and pay our respects to Indigenous elders, past, present and emerging. Sovereignty has never been ceded. It always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Hello, hola, welcome to another episode of Cachai Australia podcast. Florencia, how estás tú?
I'm really well, and you?
I'm very bien, thank you.
Bien. Okay, we're gonna start in Spanish, porque no olviden, este 21 de junio, capítulo en vivo, live episode, en The Barry, Chippendale. Vamos a estar haciendo un capítulo ahí en vivo y en directo con público. Hay entradas a la venta. El link está aquí. Aquí abajo. Sí. En Spotify, en nuestras redes sociales, en todas partes. Yes. Apóyennos, acompáñennos, pasémoslo bien, creemos comunidad. Así que ese es el primer aviso.
Segundo aviso. Who are we with today, Flo?
Today we are here with a special guest, a fellow podcaster, co-host of Interview Boss podcast, Sarah Smith. Welcome.
Gracias por invitarme a la podcast.
You're kidding.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
No.
I think I stuffed it up, but I got one of my friends to send me a little tutorial to make sure I
already
could
love
say thank
you.
you.
Oh my God.
Thank you so much for having me.
We are so happy to have you because you are an HR and recruitment professional from Australia, and we are gonna talk about the whole process of getting a professional job in this country, about cover letters, interviews, about the Australian market, about everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, let's vamos.
Vamos.
All right.
Okay. Interview Boss is a project between you, Sarah, and your sister Emma. We say hi to Emma.
Yeah, hi Emma.
You start in 2021 as a podcast, and you have already 3 seasons, more than 90 episodes, and you also offer one-on-one interview, coachings, and workshops.
Yep.
And we have to say that in the moment that we found you on Instagram was like, oh my God, that's amazing. Yeah. And we want to know, Sarah, what was the motivation to start with this project?
Great question. I had been thinking about doing something like this for a little while. I've worked in HR and recruitment for almost 10 years now, and I always found when I was giving advice to friends and family, I'd say something, explain something, and they go, oh, I never knew that. And I think I took a lot for granted of the stuff that I've learnt behind the scenes in recruitment and HR. And I've always been a massive podcast fan, and there's plenty of interview and job search advice out there in different platforms. Like YouTube's really big, but there were really no other podcasts, particularly with an Australian voice as well. So I reached out to Emma. She was a journalism student at the time, and looking for heaps of stuff for her portfolio. And she's also just the youngest sibling of 3, so she's the funny one, more outgoing, and a little bit younger as well. So I knew she was a perfect person, and she said, yep, let's do it. So 3 years in, and it's just gone nuts around the world. And we've got people constantly telling us, I got the job, I got the pay rise, I got a massive career change because of your advice. So we're not stopping anytime soon. And
I love it. I think you are doing an amazing job, because it's something really specific. It's something so difficult when you start looking for a job. I always say that looking for a job is an actual job.
Yeah, absolutely. And people who don't struggle with getting jobs, they don't get it. They don't know. They're like, why would you need a whole podcast? Haven't you run out of episodes to do yet? But people who struggle, they understand. Yeah. It occupies your entire life. All your emotions are dictated by how your job search is going. So, yeah, we do advice, inspiration, but also support for people too. Sometimes of just going, hey, it sucks. It's really hard to get rejections all the time. So, yeah.
Wow, that's so important, to feel like you are not alone. Yeah. You're not the only one having these kind of problems or these kind of difficulties when you're trying to get a job. Yeah. It's really important.
Yeah. This stuff's normal. It's to be expected.
Yeah. And for our audience listening, most of them are from Spanish-speaking countries. I want to talk about cultural shocks.
Yeah.
And in the professional landscape, one of the biggest cultural shocks for us, me and Flo at least, was the bloody cover letter.
Oh my God.
We were like, kids, Esther, what's this?
Yeah.
What?
Wow.
I have a love-hate relationship with cover letters. I think they're a bit of a hangover from the old school ways when you actually had to mail your resume. You needed a letter to go on front, otherwise it was kind of out of context. And I think they've just hung around since then.
So that's the origin of it.
Just to explain a bit, a cover letter is a letter, ideally one-page letter, when you explain why do you want this job and why you are the perfect person for this position.
Yes.
So it's kind of the moment that you have to sell yourself, or like make your own marketing.
Yeah.
It gives context to your resume.
Yeah, and I think that is really, really useful.
Yeah.
But it's difficult, especially in the beginning, because you don't understand why it's important, or you don't understand how it works. So when you arrive here, you start like just looking in Google and copy and paste one.
Oh, I copy
or
and paste
using the
so
same
much.
one for like
ChatGPT, you can automate it.
Well, thank God for ChatGPT.
Yeah.
One of your episodes, you guys were talking about
We did.
ChatGPT
Yeah.
and how to. I remember you used the words use ChatGPT, but then put your human touch, humanize what he says.
If you just like tell it to write it and then dump it in and apply with that, you're going to sound a bit robotic. There's things that it can help you with, but there's certain parts you have to write yourself.
Yeah.
But something that I struggle with, that I feel like it's the Australian professional landscape put the cover letters in such a huge pedestal.
Interesting. So here's the advice I give to our listeners. If you're going to use a generic cover letter, like copy and paste the same one for every job, just don't do it. It's not worth it.
Okay.
If it's a generic one, it's not adding any value at all. And actually, it could do you more harm, because if you've forgotten to change it from the last employer and it says, I'm really excited about my job in marketing, and you're actually applying for a different area, it makes you look like, that's embarrassing. But if you really do want that particular role and it is something you're really excited about, it's a huge opportunity to give context to the rest of your resume. So if you're going to spend the time doing one, do it properly for each role. You can have like a master one that you pull from. You don't have to write it from scratch.
Yeah, you can change some things, move it one, add something. But I think it's useful because it's the moment that you can talk a bit more about you. Yeah. And about not only your like working experience, also about like the things that you like and why these things can be useful in this role. It's
really useful, particularly for your listeners, if there's some kind of context to them and their situation. I'm currently living in here, but I'm looking to move here, or those kinds of things that you don't have an opportunity to put on a resume. Or I've been traveling a little bit and now I want to really settle down, or my partner's here and I want to stay permanently in Australia. Those are the things that are really helpful to put in a cover letter that you wouldn't otherwise have. You can't really fit that on your resume.
Well, I would think that the more I blend myself with just normal Aussie, the better. That's me thinking. I could be wrong, but if you're telling me that if I put more about myself, like if I say, "Oh, I'm from Chile," or this and this and this, and I have this background in that, would that be helpful?
Well, it depends. If it's already obvious, which it probably already is, because the companies you've got listed on your resume, they're going, "Hold on, is these overseas? I don't recognize where these are in Australia," and they'll already know, okay, is this person currently based overseas or are they in Australia? Do they have working rights? There's question marks that pop up in their head as they're going through. And so your cover letter can kind of address some of those question marks. I'll give you a good example of where they can be really useful. Most people don't use cover letters, by the way, like in my experience.
Oh, what?
No. So that's why it's a good opportunity if you actually write one properly to really have someone look at it. Look, there's people out there that'll tell you nobody reads them. And that's the risk that you run with putting too much effort in. So you don't want to spend hours and hours because people may just ignore it. But we were advertising for like a HR recruitment graduate, so someone with pretty little experience. They've just finished university. And we had someone apply who had studied a law degree and had some law experience. And so when you see that come through for an HR recruitment job, you're kind of like, What's going on? Why are you actually wanting to make a career change? Is this did you accidentally apply? I don't have any context. Or for someone who has had overseas experience and then they're in Australia, I need to know what's going on. Are you staying here permanently? Do you have working rights? Like what's the situation? And if you don't have that context, I might have to make a call on, well, your law background. I don't know why you're applying. It doesn't make sense. There's other people for me to look at. I'll keep going. But those are the moments when I go, do you have a cover letter? No, there's nothing here. Yeah, really, really helpful for anything like that. If you're relocating, if you've got a date that you're set to move somewhere, if you sometimes when if you're on a visa or something like that, it can be really helpful to make it clear to an employer that you're permanently staying. I have friends, I have family, I bought a house, I've got whatever, I'm planning, this is where I want to be long term. That can be really helpful rather than thinking, oh, I'm just here for X amount of months. That context can go in a cover letter.
And that goes with the resume as well.
Yeah. And the resume is something also different.
Yes.
Because I think in general, for us, the resume should be longest as possible. So we try to add everything. Like
including a photo.
Including a photo.
Yes.
Wow. And every kind of work experience, you add it in there. Like marketing, like I don't know, like childcare, like whatever.
Everything you've done.
Everything.
Yeah.
And when you arrive here, everyone says like, okay, you have to be like really straightforward. Add only the work experience related with the position that you are applying. Ideally, no more than 2 pages. And if you have to include like your studies and everything, it's not much space.
No, it's not.
So it's like, wow, this is also a big difference for us.
Yeah.
And we want to know for you, which one are the most important things that we have to add in the
Good
resume?
question. So I would say no photo.
No.
In Australia, it's a very like, if you're going for a job that requires you to have a certain appearance, like a modelling or an acting gig, great, put the photo on. But otherwise, it's just very shocking to click through resumes and have someone's face giant in front of you, and it can also lead to all sorts of discrimination stuff as well. You just don't want people thinking good things or bad things actually from your photo. We always say we have like resume templates for people that they can go and have a look at, and a whole episode on this, but it really depends on the context of your experience and what you're applying for as to what you should put on there. So even around having education at the top, that's really relevant for someone who's a graduate or for someone whose degree is mandatory for the job they're going for. But otherwise, if it's been 3 or 4 years, like for myself, I put my education at the bottom now because it's not the most relevant thing about me. That top half page, like you imagine opening a document on your computer, you can see just that first half page. That's really key real estate. So you want to make sure that makes someone scroll to keep reading more about you.
That's good.
Okay, sorry to interrupt. What about the 9-second rule?
Well, that's what they're seeing in that couple of seconds is... am I going to keep scrolling on this person's resume, or am I just going to go to the next one?
So there's
nothing relevant there.
So it's the headline that it will get your attention.
Top half of that first page.
Top half. Okay.
Yeah. So I recommend people have like a personal profile, something about them that just summarizes. I am a marketing professional.
Yes.
I'm an HR professional. What are you
a
calling
bit of your
yourself?
Experience.
Yeah, and picking 2 skills. It should be really short though, maybe 3 or 4 sentences, not a big long paragraph. Yeah. Then you want to put whatever's most relevant for you as a section to have. It might be, hey, I've just recently finished this degree. Great, put that at the top. That's super relevant. Otherwise, it might be your most recent job. Job titles are really important. That's what will get someone interested because they're looking for, okay, I'm hiring for a marketing job and I've got this person who's applied and their current job is bartender. And I'm going, I'm already got like, I think I might scroll a little bit to see if there's anything else on there, but otherwise I might flick to the next person. So you have to kind of win them over to scroll pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think
that's heavy. I just thought about that guy. you already just swipe left and like, oh my god.
But I think when you're looking for a job, you need to have like 2 or 3 resumes and 1 cover letter that you change for every application.
Well, it depends. If you're going for a marketing job in a hospitality role, then maybe that is super relevant. That's what I mean where it depends. But if that is where you're currently working, then in that situation, maybe your most recent role, I wouldn't put at the top. You have to be creative depending on what your situation is.
Yeah, okay.
If you've had like recent kind of marketing experience and you're going for that role, maybe push that up and then have another section for other experience, let's say. And then you could put in your other things that you wanted to include.
That's really, really useful.
So following a template for every single person is not necessarily going to be the way to go because you want it to be... I wouldn't say tailored for every role. I think that's too much work, but tailored for each category of job you're going for.
Yeah, but it's useful because when you arrive, you Google a resume and you use this template, or you ask to a friend like, "Oh, can you send me your?" And you just did a bit and you don't understand much. So it's good to understand that you have to only put the things that is relevant for this position. Not necessarily more is more. No. Sometimes less is more.
But also there's no like page limit. If you have like 10 plus years of experience, do 3 pages if you need to. If you need to get all your roles in, it's more important to have good content in there as opposed to sticking to a page limit. The whole 1 page thing, if you're a graduate, sure, probably 1 page is enough. Yeah. But if you've got more stuff, don't squish it down just to be 1 page. So you're not winning any points just for having it on 1 page.
And it's useful to add a list of skills. Because sometimes people, I don't know, Adobe skills, English, like advanced and Spanish native.
Or they do software systems and things like Outlook, and I've worked with this, and I've worked with PowerPoint and Excel.
Canva.
It can be helpful to have them on there if people are doing keyword searches, or if you're seeing those types of things on the role that they're saying you must have XYZ, you must have Adobe, you must have whatever, then it is relevant and you should put it on there because then they know that you do have that thing. Yeah. I don't love the skills section though, and it definitely shouldn't go in the top half. Yeah. Because it's one of those things that it's helping you from a keyword perspective potentially. If they're searching for, I just want to see the people that mentioned Adobe on their resume. Yeah. But stick it down the bottom if you really want to have it.
Yeah. I want to say that that's all really helpful, but for me personally, it was shocking to talk about myself in English. At the beginning, I just pictured myself at the beginning. I was like, what? I'm a people person, and like,
it's very odd to have to talk about yourself.
But I feel like it's more common here, at least in my opinion. I think people do it more. The way to find a job into a way of selling yourself, it's really more common than at least it was for me. So
I don't know. For me, I think it's pretty similar.
Okay.
But it's difficult to do it in another language.
Yes.
And in another culture because I don't know. In our country, you know all the codes and you understand more which things are relevant or how you can express yourself to feel like you are like I don't know. You have the skills or I don't know. It's different here. It's like. I don't know the codes. I don't know the way they are talking. I don't know if I have to be formal or informal or which is the perfect tone.
I'd say I often see people make the mistake of going a bit too formal and too much into ChatGPT language and buzzwords where you read something like, your job was serving people drinks. Efficiently you served beverages and various other cocktail varieties too, and you just like
you were a bartender. Don't give me.
We don't need to make it. The person who's reviewing your resume probably isn't an expert in the exact job that you're going for.
Yes.
Either they're an internal recruiter and they work for the company and they know a bit about each job, but they don't do those jobs, so they don't know the intricate ins and outs, and they've been told what to look for in general, or they're an agency recruiter and they might be a little bit more specialised, but you need to put it in common sense language. And I think the actual content is so much more important than the formatting or the layout or anything like that. I often tell people you're not trying to stand out and do something different and creative and fun. People talk about having a different format or having it more beautiful, or the old thing of when you're physically handing in resumes, putting it on coloured paper so it stands out in the pile. The goal is not to stand out by having something different or fun. The goal is to stand out by what's written there. I want to open your resume and have it look, in terms of sections, pretty much like the others, so that I can quickly start reading and working out who you are and what you're doing, not be confused about where everything is and spending a bit of time getting acquainted before I then start reading.
To me, to be forward, let's say you got picked out. Like your resume was well done. You're gonna get the first interview. Okay, from our perspective, it's also really hard. Like on my first interview, it was like, tell me a little bit about yourself. And I'm like, obviously I didn't do my research. I didn't know interview boss by then. Now I do. But it was I came from Chile and I started telling my whole story. And I just can see in his face like, that's not what I want.
I think sometimes the questions here are so deep.
You reckon? Okay.
Tell me about an I don't know, an experience of something really difficult and how you manage
You overcome.
and you overcome about it. It's like, oh my God, like
Behavioral questions.
trying to
Because
think and answer. Wow.
interview questions have come a long way.
Uh-huh.
If you think about it, you're trying to judge whether someone can do this actual job, and all you've got is maybe an hour to talk to them about them discussing the job.
Yes.
And people can be good at the job but not good at discussing it. So interviews are really not a very effective way to work out if someone can do the job or not. But they're kind of the best we have, right? Because you can't give everyone a trial in the job when you've got 50 applications. So it's kind of what you have to do. So they're imperfect, but behavioural interview questions are much better than any other type of question. Because if you said to me, hypothetically, what would you do in this situation? Well, in a hypothetical world, I'm perfect and I do everything right all the time. But when you say, tell me about a time where this did happen and what did you actually do? There needs to be a lot more detail there of what actually played out and how I made the decision in that moment. And it's a much better predictor of future behaviour as opposed to, well, hypothetically, I would always give money to the homeless man. You know what I mean? It's like, well, what did you do last time you saw one? Oh, well, you know, like we're all much better in a hypothetical type question.
Lovely.
And I think that it's really, really important to be well prepared. For me, was like a huge difference between the first interview and the second one.
Okay.
Because you know that you need to be prepared. So I study a lot, like about the company. I thought about like ideas that I could propose to them, which things I wanted to do when I get the job, or so many things. So when I arrived with another attitude. Okay, I'm ready. Because if you're gonna like ask me whatever, I know about your company. I know about my skills. I actually I write some skills that I have, or some ideas that I have. So many things to be like well prepared. And another thing that helps me a lot, and you told me, Abraham, is that they ask you that, do you have any questions for us?
Oh, yeah, true.
You have to have questions.
You have to ask.
So
I
important.
didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said to me, I was like,
because I watch a
thank
video.
you.
Because it seems like, sometimes it really helps to think about from the interviewer's perspective. They might be working with you full time, 40 hours a week, and all they've got to go on is this one conversation. And there's this whole job that you are talking about potentially doing, and they've only spoken to you for maybe an hour. And at the end, they say, do you have any questions? And they're thinking, this job has a lot to it. There's a whole company, there's a whole team you don't know, there's all this stuff. Is there anything else you want to know? And you're like, nope, I know everything.
Oh, yeah.
You know everything in an hour? Come on.
Red flag.
Yeah. Or you're not, you don't seem curious about it. You don't seem like you're really actually considering it.
Right.
And so people say, what are the best questions? What questions should I ask?
You
should ask what you want to know.
You
You should be genuinely really curious and throw in a couple of good ones.
But I think that it's always useful to have like one or two.
I gave you a couple.
I
You
say
give me a
3. You
couple.
should go in with at least 3.
Okay.
You could ask all 3. They might cover one of them already. Day in the life, and they've already told you about that. And then you can ask the other 2.
Can you give us one?
Well, it has to be based on what you really want to know about. So for me, the last time I was applying for jobs, the person I was working for, like the head of the area, was really important to me. So I asked about, tell me about your leadership style and how you like to work with people that report to you. And that was something that I really cared about for that particular career move. So that's what I wanted to know about.
I think another one is like, how is a typical day in this role?
Really helpful to get a sense of what the job actually involves if it's not super
daily
clear.
basis.
Otherwise, you can ask about the team. You could ask about like what software they use or what systems. Again, I like to, because a lot of my role is you using these systems day in, day out. I kind of want to know what you've got currently in place. Is it awful or is it all right? So I think curiosity is the key for coming in with questions, and I think you should bring them in a notebook, because after a whole hour you had all these great questions and they're like, do you have any questions? You're like, oh, they've all left my head, I can't remember. So you have a notebook and you go,
not weird? It's not weird to get a notebook?
No, it makes you, if you think about like what would you be doing if you're attending a meeting, well, you would have notes. You would have a computer.
Yeah.
Like, it just seems...
Yeah.
And I don't think you should have a computer or a phone. There's something weird about the technology thing of, like, are you texting someone or whatever? But
Yes.
a notebook to go, yeah, I actually do. Do you mind if I just grab these out and you open up your thing for your questions and you have them
That's
prepared?
good.
Even that pause. Even that pause makes you
I
look.
got that book
This
with
person
me,
knows.
with notebook, but I leave it in my backpack
No,
because I
get
thought
it
that
out.
maybe could be weird to
Yeah.
take my notes. Or,
No, get it out. You can write notes during the interview as well. I also tell people to have prompts in there of stuff that they wanted to mention. And if you go blank or you're not sure, or you get a question and you panic a little bit, you know that your notebook is right there and you can go, oh, sorry, I've just lost my train of thought. Do you mind if I just look at my notes? Okay, great. Do you mind asking me the question again? And you've got your notes now. It's a fallback. You probably won't even need it, but knowing that it's there, that you've got a backup option, a safety
And it makes
net.
you feel human.
Yeah.
I love that.
Dude, I love that.
The magic notebook. You can use it for so many things.
Yeah, and I love that point because I also saw a reel that you were talking about the things that you can do, and it's not a problem if you say, like, can you ask me again because I didn't get the question, or I don't know, this kind of thing that we try to look like perfect.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we are
Particularly,
not.
I've seen this with people who English is their second language,
Yeah.
and they'll
For
pretend
sure.
that they understood the question.
Oh, that's a huge one
And
for us.
answer the complete wrong question. And it's so much worse. It's so much worse than just asking, sorry, do you mind rephrasing that? Sometimes I've asked a question and it wasn't planned and I didn't have it written down.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, I'm thinking of it as I'm saying it. And so it's a bit disorganized as a question. And I'm fully aware of that. And someone says, oh, do you mind asking me that again? I'm like, yeah. And I actually make it a better question, like an easier question for them to understand. So, like, do that rather than thinking, oh, yeah, they've asked me this. And you're talking about the complete wrong thing.
Like, is
Because...
it- yeah.
I'm sure we'll get to this later, but that's the kind of thing that takes someone from going, oh, this person has an accent, they make certain grammatical mistakes, to going, they can't understand me.
Yeah.
And that's when you tick over into, oh, you can't even understand my questions.
Yeah.
That's going to be challenging.
Yeah.
And it might just be coming from, I thought I heard you, but I didn't really. Just ask it again. So much better.
Wow, it's weird to
That's
think
good.
like maybe you can be a human in a job interview.
The people interviewing you don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
They don't really want to be there. They
Yeah.
don't like interviews. They don't have this
Yeah.
whole master plan most of the time.
Right.
They're just humans. And if you can try and get it into a bit of a conversation
Yeah.
back and forth,
Yeah.
I feel like I've done that so many times. When you're like, you go into an interview, like, oh yeah, a bit of banter at the beginning. I'm like, oh, I got this. Oh, I got this. And then because I didn't prepare myself for the interview for what they're gonna ask me, I fully blew it. And then I understood. And then what I did, I didn't know about you guys at the time, but I knew found LinkedIn. They have like a full video things, and I follow that up. And then for the interview, I prepare so well. I match myself. I found the values of the company that I was applying, and I found that and the ones that we match. And I said, well, and I nailed it. I went to the interview. It didn't go through, but the interview was fine. That was,
you can kind of get that feeling. Even if you don't get the job, you're like, but I did well.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm confident that, like, I could do that again.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
someone's going to offer me the job.
And to put
eventually.
context, well, you got that job that you were talking about
Yes.
recently. So
Yes, recently.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And when I went to the interview,
Yeah.
I felt so well.
Yeah.
I felt like
yeah,
comfortable.
yeah,
and
you told me
confident.
even
I
that.
told
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
Like, I enjoy it.
Yeah.
I had a good
Yeah.
time because I was really well prepared.
Yeah.
I, like, the day before, I spent the whole day, like, especially this that you said around, like, matching the values and
Yeah.
my skills.
Yeah.
And I found so many points in common and
Yeah.
things that I genuinely thought that I could, like, I don't know, really give them good things for
Yeah.
the job. And yes, and I enjoyed a lot the interview.
Yeah,
Was
nice.
and they are now my bosses. They are really, really nice
Yeah.
person. So it was amazing.
Yeah.
And I got that feeling like, oh wow,
Yeah.
was good. Doesn't matter the results, but I enjoy it. Like
Yeah.
I know I think that I'm understanding how this job
Yeah.
interview
And
works.
it's something that I didn't set out with this in mind, but it's kind of come to me over the past few years of doing Interview Boss. The power of knowing that you can interview well if you need to it holds people back in their careers. They don't apply for promotions. They don't go for other jobs. They feel stuck in toxic workplaces with horrible bosses or underpaid because they're too terrified of an interview. Oh, I can't. I'm not good at interviews. I'm no good at that. Even if you don't get the job, just that feeling of coming out and knowing, hey, I can do this. There is a formula I can follow where I can be good at interviews. That unlocks everything. You start your new job and then there's a promotion in a different team. You're like, I might apply. Because you know that you can go through that. It unlocks people's whole lives.
In my case, the one that didn't go through, just to put context in that one as well, like when I left the room, I felt so good because I identified that I even verbalized this to the guy. I said, look, I feel like this is not a role for me. I feel like I'm going to resent you because what your job description is not what I was expecting. So I feel like it's not going to, I'm going to burn out. And I just felt so mature because I really wanted a job, but I was like...
You're interviewing them as well. It's so important. It has to be two ways.
How the tables upturned now, man.
That's what the questions are about. You want to actually know. You're going to be spending all this time with these people, working on what they tell you to. You want to know whether you're going to be miserable or not. And it can really take away some of the nerves too, because I think people get really caught up when they think this is my dream job. This is my dream job. Like complete because they're just terrified of bombing it for their dream job. Take that away. Go hunting in your research for some red flags. What don't you like about the company? What's a red flag about the boss? Does their turnover seem high? Find some stuff just to plant a seed of doubt. What I always say to people is you can't possibly know that this is your dream job yet. So far, things are looking good, but you don't know what things are really like on the inside. And that can help take away some of the nerves because it's not your dream job. It might be, but you're there to find out.
Moving on, something that I like about your show is that sometimes you guys start with like a story of some of your listeners. I don't know if you're listening or some social media.
Shoot your shot, shout out.
And we want to do something like that a little bit.
Oh, cool.
I've got a friend that once she was a permanent resident here. Now she's a citizen. And she's got a very Latino name and last name. And she would apply to...
and you can say because we already have 4 names and surnames.
You can tell. You can
tell easily.
And she would apply for jobs. She's an engineer back home, and she was applying for like more like really like project manager roles, like something like really lower than what she was doing back home. And she would get back on the email like, "What's your visa status?" Even though she said on the thing somewhere in I'm a permanent resident. And then she realized, well, these people are not reading or I'm doing something wrong. So she put it back in the top. And then still she would get what's your visa status just because of the name. And so hence my question is there any discrimination by the names, or in your experience, do you see some of like profiling because of that, or because of the visa status or the last names in your experience, in your work experience?
Yeah, and I thought about this in prep because you mentioned that this is something that your listeners would really be interested in. And I don't know if this is going to be really affirming or really depressing. It happens, absolutely.
Yes.
I've personally seen it all over the place. The judgment for this person has an accent, this person is on a visa, this person's, where are they from really? Just, it absolutely happens. And I'm sure that feels a mixture of depressing, but also, I knew it. Because... it is. And something that we always talk about on our episodes is we're not here to tell you what the world should be like, but we're here to help you with what it actually is like.
Yes.
The part of it, and to give some context, it's not an excuse at all, but to give some context, whenever you advertise for roles, particularly in engineering and roles that are kind of degree related, you will get a huge amount of applications from people that are currently overseas in their home country who don't have any visa. They don't have, even their phone number is like an international phone number, and you just get heaps of them. And like, how are you going to hire someone who's not even, like, it's just a whole like an automatic no, because even if you're going to consider sponsoring someone, you kind of need to be here or already in the process or something. And it tends to build this resentment of, oh, I get all these people who aren't even here, don't even have the Australian qualifications. And that can lead to generalising for other people who aren't in that exact same situation, but maybe share some characteristics.
Yeah.
And it happens a lot in IT, tends to be more Indian applications for IT.
Yes.
I find engineering and stuff tends to be more kind of Spanish-speaking countries, a lot of applications. So sometimes that can end up in people generalising. I would say that definitely putting like your visa status or something at the very top is really helpful. Yeah, absolutely. Because, or in your cover letter or both actually, to reiterate, I have a partner here, I'm a permanent resident, I'm a citizen, like make it clear that like you are permanently based here. There's the other thing about you don't have Australian experience.
Yes.
And that's tough. Sometimes you'll be treated the worst like that, in particular by recruitment agencies. If you think about it this way, the company is paying a recruitment agency. You don't pay for the service as an individual person, and they're being paid to find someone who pretty much has already had the same job at a competitor. Like they're paying for like a 100% candidate, someone who's perfect, can start the job immediately. So if any stage in your career you're an exception to that rule, and that goes for Australian people as well. If you're doing a career change, typically an agency recruiter is not going to help you because they're being paid to find someone who is a perfect candidate, not someone they have to pay for and take a chance on at the same time. Okay. Does that kind of make sense? So typically you'll find with any of those things, if you're career changing, if you're relocating, if you've got a visa situation, if there's something there, agencies are probably not the best place for you to start. You're better off going direct.
That's a good tip.
Which is something that our community does a lot.
Yes. It's good to know because it makes sense.
It depends. If you're in a very, very candidate short market and like people are screaming out for overseas talent, great. You probably will get somewhere with an agency. But if they've got options locally, agencies are just not going to go out of their way to help you. They're trying to find. Yeah. I lasted 5 and a bit months in agency. I couldn't cut it because you have to see the people that walk through the door as how much can I place you for? How much money can you make me in commissions? And if that person is not easily placeable, I'll just move on and find someone who is easily placeable, and that's an easier way for me to get my commission.
Makes sense.
And I also understand
they're not evil. That's just the way the system works. You know?
And I also understand that the visa situation is an issue.
Of course.
Because if you have a visa to expire in 6 months.
6 months. Why would you hire someone?
Yes.
It's tough.
But there's also another visas that gives you the opportunity, like the postgraduate visa. We've been talking a lot about this visa and why it's a good one. The skills visa. Now there's more options, but obviously it's difficult if you're arriving to Australia with a 6-month studying visa or with a working holiday visa that you only can work 6 months with the same employee. It's obviously that they are gonna think twice and many times if you are the correct person for this role.
And the other thing that I've seen a bit too, and just to your point about your friend applying for jobs that were much less senior than what she was doing overseas, it's kind of tricky because you're like, okay, well, I'll get Australian experience at a lower level so that I can get back to where I was before. But it happens where people come in, get their Australian experience at that level and go, cool, I've got Australian experience now. See ya. Thanks to the company who helped me out. I'm off to go back to the level that I'm actually qualified at. And then leave, less than 6 months in. So her coming in at a project manager level and going, okay, great, I'm actually going to go and get the job that I used to do overseas somewhere else. And so there's this hesitancy. Again, this happens for Australian people too. You're overqualified. That's kind of what people will be saying. And often it's around, why are you applying for a job at this level? Is this just so that you can get something? And as soon as you're in, you're going to find something different because now that you've got a job, then you can focus on getting a better job.
But the answer is always going to be yes.
Well,
unless the company values are really valuable for you.
And so sometimes it might be better to target something that is more close to what you have been doing overseas so that they can see where it aligns. Oh, look, I'm taking a little bit of a step back, but I want to stay around this level because that's what I'm qualified to do, versus going too far junior and then going, you're not going to put up with this. You were running the show, you're running $1 million budgets and you're going to come and do someone else's bidding on site.
But I saw how much makes a difference to have an Australian experience in your resume. In my first job was I don't know, I applied for more than 10 jobs and I got 2 calls and 2 interviews, and one was the job that I got.
Yeah.
And this job finished after a few months because they finished the contract, and I started looking again for a job, and I applied to around 10 again, and I had like 6 called.
Yeah.
And I went to 3 interviews, and I had to choose between 2 jobs.
The first one's always the hardest. It's the same at so many different parts of your career. Like when you first leave high school and then when you first leave university, like there's all these times where you have like the first job. It's always the hardest. I'd say it's the same when you're moving countries as well. That first one is going to be tough. Networking is absolutely a great way to do it. If you can use the people that you've met through you guys in your community or other people that you know, anyone who has ever been on a visa will all automatically be more open to considering other people because they know what that was like.
I know.
And if you can find someone in that situation, I know you had a migration agent as well who talked about making sure you're starting looking early. Companies will sponsor someone if they're already working there because they're like, oh, we have to get someone else in. Oh, it's just easier. We'll just pay the money and sponsor them so they can stay. But you need to be there first on some kind of your own visa to get in the door, and then they won't want to lose you.
Yeah.
That's the way to do it. You have to find a way to get in first, whether it's the graduate visa.
I think that's the
smartest way.
The most difficult part, like the first one.
Yes.
Also because, I don't know, here is really common that they ask you for references.
Yes.
So they call them or they send them an email. And when you just start, your references are like the manager of the coffee. I don't know. You don't have like good ones.
Yeah.
And for the second job, you already have one like from an Australian company.
Yeah.
So looks better, gives them more like, I don't know.
You can do an international one, do an email address. Like if you did a combination and you had one local that was a job that you were doing temporarily and you had an email reference from overseas, you can say, hey, you can email them their questions. It should be the company email address so that they have confidence that it's the real person.
I did that one when I first got here.
I've done plenty of that for people before.
Nice.
It's easier for me too. I don't have to try and get them on the phone.
You and then you speak in Spanish with them?
No.
Okay.
No.
Sorry, I thought that you were bilingual by your introduction.
No, you just that was a one-off, and I absolutely made a mistake in it.
No, that's fine.
I think we both have different thoughts and experience about this topic between Abraham and me. At the beginning, I always thought that I never wanna be able to work as a professional here because of my English.
Yeah, right.
So for me, it was like, okay, if I want to live in Australia, I'm gonna do different kind of jobs. I'm gonna work as a cleaner. I'm gonna work in hospitality, whatever. Yeah. Because I'm never gonna be able to work as a professional.
Wow.
I always thought that.
Yeah, right.
And after 3 years, I start feeling confident with my English. And I said like, okay, I'm going to try. And when I try, I had a really good surprise because I got opportunities. Because especially now in this actual job that I have now, there's so many people from different backgrounds. Yeah. We are so many with different accents. Yeah. It's like, wow, this place is amazing. It's like, it's a foundation. So obviously they have a really beautiful background,
mission
and
vision
and everything. But for me, the expectation reality was better the reality than the expectation.
Low expectations.
Yes, really low. No expectation, actually.
That's the secret to happiness. Low expectations.
Yes.
And then I think that represents a lot of people from our community that comes with that mentality of like, I'm just going to do cleaning jobs or like laboring jobs. Yeah. Like my English maybe won't reach the expectations of a professional. On the other hand, you have something that happened to me that I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to get a professional job for sure. Are you kidding? They need me there. So I rocked up here, like, which is very common in my community, to rock up with like a bit of an ego. Like, well, I was an engineer or ex here or whatever back home. I should be able to translate that into the Australian market. And then you just go and send resumes without knowing anything about it, without doing cover letters, everything you explained before. And
or meeting anyone who's locally here
Yeah.
who can give you some advice or
nothing whatsoever. And you think
it's brutal because if you just get tons of rejections back and that's
Yeah.
your introduction to the Australian market,
Exactly.
it's horrible.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I sort of like always resent the Australian market.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, they just don't.
What
They
type
just
of
don't care.
roles were you applying for?
My background is in marketing, but yeah, whatever. I don't do that anymore.
Okay, yeah.
See, because I got a bit like well, no, whatever. I just do something else.
Yeah.
And that's something that we love about Australia, that you can reinvent yourself so easily.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I think that represents two sides of the story. Well, it could be more sides. We don't know. Multiverses of this story. But it represents a lot that happens. It goes through, our community goes through.
Yeah.
Which is that ego thing where you think, oh yeah, I'm going to make it. And then you don't. And then you're just like, shit, what do I do now? Or I will never be able to do it. And then you actually make it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just wanted to share that reflection, and maybe if you have sort of advice for one of those cases.
I think it's going to be a different experience depending on the roles that you're going for and what that market is like. Marketing, as an example, is already extremely competitive.
Yes.
When you take that element out of it, already for people trying to... Marketing has this thing where you tend to get really... pigeonholed into the industry that you're in. Oh, you're FMCG. Oh, you're brand marketing. Oh, you're digital. You're for a retail brand. You're for B2B, B2C. You get really stuck and you can't even move between those, let alone changing countries. So I think people will have different experiences depending on where they're coming from. Often the qualifications don't transfer. That can be really challenging.
True.
Particularly if it's trades or something like that.
Yep.
So it will depend on what the role is that you're going for. But like networking is an incredible way to at least find out, okay, can I meet some people who are in the industry I'd like to be in?
Yes.
We call this a coffee chat. It's not trying to get someone to hire you. It's actually trying to meet with a peer who's in the job that you would like.
Yep.
Reach out to them on LinkedIn and say, hey, I've just moved to Australia. I've done this previously.
Yeah.
I'd love to just buy you a coffee and ask you some questions about what it's like here in Australia and get their point of view. Maybe they can look over your resume. Maybe they can introduce you to someone else that you should meet. Ask questions about, okay, where do you think I would be competitive, or what kind of levels do you think I should go for based on what I've done? That kind of advice, invaluable. And people think, oh, it's really awkward to reach out to someone on LinkedIn when they don't know me.
I've done it.
You don't reach out to like the big boss or the head of or whatever. You're reaching out to the mid-career kind of people. Trust me, they do not get reached out to for that stuff ever. Absolutely not. They get sales things or like recruiters trying to hit them up, but they don't ever get any genuine networking connections, which is what it's meant to be about. So that's a huge tip that I would say.
And can I ask you your opinion, just to finish the conversation, about the immigrant presence in the Australian workforce? What do you think? There is a lot of immigrants working in a professional jobs. There is not many. How is your feeling about it?
It's been really different depending on the companies and the industries I've worked in. I spent some time in Canberra. I went to uni there and then stayed there afterwards. And pretty much the entire Canberra job market is Australian citizens, because you're working with government. And so even if you're contracting into government, you have to have a security clearance, and often you need to be a citizen as well. That was incredibly, incredibly tough for people to come in when they didn't have either permanent residency or citizenship. And often people, their only option was kind of the not-for-profit sector. Sydney is so much more open than that, but it depends on the places that you work. So
in the industry,
I've worked in companies where most conversations, everyone's first language is English, and it's even like super male dominated as well. It's like there's no diversity at all, let alone language diversity. And then I've worked in other companies, typically more international companies, where everyone around the table has a different accent, and everyone just deals with it. Like, it's not a thing that you go, oh, I can't understand you because you have an accent. You just deal with it. So I think you'd be better off kind of trying to find pockets of places that already have that, rather than trying to change a company from being non-diverse to trying to be diverse.
That's a good advice. And I think that for all of our listeners now, they have you in their lives. They have interview boss in their lives, the podcast, the website, the webinars, the coaching sessions, because I think that you are doing something amazing, really, really useful, and we are really glad to have you
Thank you so
here.
much.
Please, just the mic is yours. We do always an open mic. You can say whatever you want.
Well, go and find us wherever you're listening to this podcast. We are called Interview Boss. We have over 90 episodes that you can scroll through and find whichever one's relevant to your situation. We're also on Instagram, TikTok, or you can check out our website. And we've got free resources for job seekers. So we've got cover letter templates, resume templates, and there's actually help in there of how to actually write them as opposed to just the template itself. So go and check them out. We've got interview questions that you can practice. There's heaps of free stuff.
Oh, lovely. Thank you so much for coming. It was a lovely conversation. There's so many more things that we can talk about.
Many,
but time got to us and that's it. Muchas gracias.
And thank you to our listeners. As always, follow, síganos, estrellitas, compartan.
Buy your tickets. 21st of June.
Exacto.
Live show, evento en vivo.
Los esperamos.
I'll see you there. Gracias, Flo. Gracias again.
a ti.
I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.
Bye.
No tengo miedo, por favor, no quiero. Así se toma.